In the 1990s, there were two touring car series that went all out in terms of manufacturer involvement and big budgets. There was the BTCC, which ruled the world between 1997 and 1999, even if the category of car it ran, Super Touring, was only in effect between 1991 and 2000. And the death of one of those series probably solidified the success of the other, if only for a couple of extra years. As I've talked about on many occasions, the BTCC was packed with manufacturer support, big name drivers, some of whom ran in Formula 1, and budgets that rival back of the grid F1 teams. But there was another touring car series that got so outlandish, it died completely. DTM. And both series actually suffered because the BTCC, while it had introduced Super Touring to the masses, it just got out of control, and it really got out of control once aerodynamic parts became legal in 1995 thanks to Alfa Romeo and their trick splitter and spoiler. So thanks for igniting the spark that killed the best touring car era ever, Alfa. And also apologies for any mispronunciations of my German in this video. My German is limited to Rammstein lyrics and Natürlich has das ist steht unter einem Wasserfall, which is probably wrong. In 1993, Group A touring car rules that had been in use in Britain up until about 1990 were abandoned, and it was replaced by a new formula called Class 1, which was basically Class 2, or Super Touring, but with a bit more freedom. It was like Group B, or LMP1. So at this point, Super Touring required the cars to have the production car shell, and if the production car had spoilers and splitters on, then the touring car could use it. It was to try and cut down on homologation specials and keep it a, in inverted commas, true touring car competition. But bizarrely for Germany, those rules didn't apply. The car had to resemble the original though, but they could add on what they wanted. And while the cars in Britain were limited to a 2-litre 6-cylinder engine, DTM Class 1 went a little bit further and allowed a 2.5-litre 6-cylinder engine. The only caveat was that manufacturers had to build their own engines, but the engine could be custom to the touring car and not have to be a variation on what was already available in that manufacturer's catalogue. But only 3 manufacturers actually turned up to race, even though 5 companies had built cars. There was Opel, or Vauxhall to us here in Britain, there was Mercedes, and there was Alfa. But BMW and Audi had also built cars, but just never raced them. And while the Alfa 155 DTM looked outwardly similar to its BTCC counterpart, underneath, the cars were totally different animals. 4-wheel drive? You can have it. Traction control? Sure. ABS systems? Why not? Limited slip diffs? As it's you. And from 1995 onwards, you could have active suspension. Opel had their active suspension built by the Williams Formula 1 team, and Opel and Alfa both ran 4-wheel drive. Mercedes kept their C-Class rear-wheel drive, but they opted to install tunnels that went along the door sills on the floor, and a computer shifted weights forwards and backwards automatically on braking and acceleration. How much did that cost? And with manufacturer involvement came the opportunity to make fans a part of the show, and make the employees part of the show. Massive discounts were offered to ticket prices for Mercedes, Alfa and Opel employees, and there was an open paddock so anybody could go backstage as it were and meet their favourite drivers. And since the employees were kitted out in the merch of their respective companies, it was like having 3 sets of fans in the same football ground at Hockenheim. But then in 1995, DTM decided to do some expansion. The teams not only competed in DTM as they normally would, but they also competed in what was known as the FIA International Touring Car Series. The ITC was held at 10 races outside of Germany, and the DTM proper was held inside Germany and had 14 races. The DTM Championship spanned 7 race weekends at Hockenheim, Aarhus, the Norrisring, Diepholz, Nürburgring, the Allemannen and then the season finale at Hockenheim. Hockenheim traditionally bookended the season. The ITC calendar was 5 weekends at Mugello, a street race in Helsinki, Donington Park, Estoril and Manicure. And in this series was a host of names that you might recognise. Bernd Schneider, Klaus Ludwig, Kurt Thiem, who is Nicky's father, Dario Franchitti, Nicola Larini, Alessandro Nannini, Jan Magnussen, JJ Leto, Giancarlo Fisichella, Stefano Modena, Keke Rosberg, Bernd Mailander, Michele Alboreto, Gabriele Tarquini and Fabrizio Giovanni, to name quite literally 15. The whole calendar was run between April and November, with the championship split in 2, so your points from Mugello wouldn't count to your DTM and your points from Nürburgring wouldn't count for your ITC. In order, it was Hockenheim, Aarhus, Mugello, Helsinki, Norrisring, Donington, Diepholz, Estoril, Nürburgring, Allemannen, Manicure and Hockenheim. There were 2 races in the same day with a 30-minute gap in between the 2 races, although you only had 22 of those 30 to get the car fixed if you trashed it. Tiffany Dell drove the Class C at Hockenheim for Top Gear and said, "The Alphas growled, the Mercedes had a high-pitched rasp and the Opel was quiet and unassuming, until you put someone like Keke Rosberg behind the wheel. But then, it all went to hell." DTM wanted to combine the 2 series and rebrand to the ITC permanently. Now the ITR, who govern the series like TOCA governs the BTCC, went to the FIA to get approval to rebrand and the FIA said they could. But what then happened is that the ITR let the FIA take over a lot of the running of the series. The bit that actually killed them was that the ITR let the FIA take over the financial side. Costs were already escalating because Alfa, Opel and Mercedes sought to make their cars faster with more elaborate active suspension, better traction control and aerodynamics, and the costs were sent skyrocketing even further as the teams were now expected to shift their super expensive cars to places like Suzuka in Japan and Interlagos in Brazil. Costs for TV rights went through the roof, and as a result only Germany, Italy and Finland had it shown on television. Ticket prices also went up, and then you had to pay a premium to be allowed into the paddock. In turn, the attendances suffered. The French event had low attendance, as it often did for Formula 1, as the track was many miles from a major French city, and the Brazilians didn't care for the series at all. In fact, Alfa Romeos were not sold in Brazil at that time, so Alfa saw no point in racing in Brazil because they were basically spending millions of marks on a physical advert for their product that they weren't actually able to sell, because they didn't sell it. So at the end of 1996, Alfa left, and so did Opel. And since Mercedes was the only manufacturer left, the ITC and DTM died before being resurrected in 2000. Franchitti went to the States, Magnussen, Wirtz and Fisichella went full-time in Formula 1, Schneider joined Mercedes' endurance program and Giovinazzi went on to win 2 BTCC championships. But fast forward to 2020, and DTM is in a similar position. The only 2 manufacturers left on the grid are Audi and BMW, with Mercedes pulling out entirely. And once again, DTM has got cars called Class 1, which are very similar to the Super GT cars used in Japan, and crossover events had been attempted to try and get fans interested on both sides, so fans in Germany interested in Japan, and vice versa. At the end of 2020, Audi withdrew completely, and BMW was left with a stillborn M4 Class 1 car that would have been used this year if the series had not switched to GT3s. And you can drive that car in R-Factor 2. Interest in the series dropped a lot, although some interest was recouped because Alex Albon was racing, and then there was the sudden explosion of outrage and interest following Kelvin van der Linde's iRacing 3 name a meme / Turn 1 Pro gamer move in Nuremberg. Manuel Reuter was on record with Autosport in the August of 2020 saying, "The problem is the championship got too expensive. We found not enough manufacturers in Germany or in Europe to jump into the series, and over the years it was going far too engineer driven. At the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, why are we doing this championship? And our first priority should be the fans. For what reason do we need sophisticated aero? Okay, we might be 5 or 10 seconds quicker and it's great for qualifying laps, but this is not our sport. We've lost our DNA." And out of the demise of the ITC and DTM, the BTCC became the top touring car series in Europe, if not the world. But our implosion was not too far behind. The team started spending far too much money here as well, and Jason Plato and Matt Neal, 2 BTCC stalwarts, claim that in 1998 Nissan and Renault were spending upwards of £10 million for 2 cars. Ford might have spent more still. The aerodynamics that was legalised in 1995 got too advanced and cars couldn't follow, so they started smashing each other off the track to get past. Which was no matter, money was no issue for some of these companies, but then the repair bills started getting higher. Wages as well. Standard wage was about £350,000 in 1998. Matt Neal offered his services to Nissan to drive for free, but they went and signed Laurent Aiello for 1999 instead. £750,000 in a national touring car series. At the end of the 1999 season, only Vauxhall, Ford and Honda were left. At the end of 2000, it really went to pot and the BTCC resorted to filling the grid with Class N cars so it could keep on running, and it wasn't until the NGTC spec cars came along that it got back on its feet. But DTM, on the other hand, died, rose, and looks to have died again, becoming another standard issue GT3 series, and according to some in the know, DTM has not learned its lesson from the first time it happened. But I would like to know your opinions on that, even if this isn't one of the opinion type videos. So then, a look back at how DTM sort of killed itself in the 1990s. If you've enjoyed this look back through the history books, then give the video a like so I know I've done a good job, and if you want to see more like this, hit subscribe and get that bell on so you never miss out on a future video. Massive thanks as ever go out to the good folk of Patreon. If you want to join them in giving me a monthly tip, you can do so by following the link in the description, as well as finding pointers to my social media and Discord and stuff. So until next time, I've been AdmiralLaWind. Have a great day wherever you live in the world, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. Goodbye.